The air in the Catalina Foothills does not just get cold when the sun drops. It turns heavy, carrying a suffocating silence that feels like a physical weight pressing against the glass. You need to drop whatever you are doing right now, forget the sanitized headlines, and erase the frantic news cycles you've been fed. I am about to completely dismantle the public narrative surrounding the Nancy Guthrie case, and once I pull back this curtain, the comfortable story of a tragic kidnapping will evaporate. In its place, you will find something far more jagged, calculated, and deeply sinister. We all recognize the face of the victim. Nancy Guthrie is the 84-year-old matriarch of Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie. We have all seen the grainy, looping footage of the masked shadow lingering on the porch, heard the terrified whispers about blood staining the concrete, and watched the heart-wrenching image of Savannah Guthrie trembling before a national audience, pleading with a phantom to return her mother. But there is a massive, gaping lie at the absolute center of this investigation, a rot that both the authorities and the media are too terrified to name plainly. Nancy Guthrie was never kidnapped. I am not presenting this to you as a wild theory or a late-night hunch. I am stating this because the undeniable physics of that night, the biological reality of the blood left behind, and the chilling digital heartbeat of a dying signal all point to a meticulously planned execution that violently derailed. To truly understand the horror of what transpired, you have to understand the target. Nancy Guthrie was not just a grandmother, she was a woman of rhythmic, highly predictable habits, living in a rural sanctuary specifically designed for isolation and peace. The Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos, publicly described her as sharp as a tack, yet she was physically tethered to her survival by a pacemaker that transmitted her cardiac data in real time. This was never a crime of opportunity. Whoever stepped onto her porch on the night of January 31st did not just stumble upon her home by accident. They had mapped her entire life, ruthlessly studied her physical vulnerabilities, and waited in the pitch black for her children to drop her off and the interior lights to finally flicker out. This was a calculated hunt. At exactly 1:47 in the morning, the digital eyes of the house went completely dark. Do not mistake this for a technical glitch or a sudden Wi-Fi failure. A figure heavily draped in layers specifically designed to swallow any trace of DNA, with gloves tucked tightly into sleeves and a ski mask pulled taut against the jaw, reached up and physically ripped the doorbell camera from its mount. The FBI had to scrape the digital afterbirth of residual back-end data just to witness the exact moment the intruder used vegetation to blind the lens. The attacker knew the house, knew the technology, and likely knew that Nancy Guthrie did not even possess an active cloud recording subscription. They were not hiding from a live feed. They were performing for a ghost. The true, terrifying countdown of this crime did not begin with the blinded camera. It began with the sudden silence of a human heart. For 41 excruciating minutes, the world was blind to the porch. But at 2:28 in the morning, the pacemaker inside Nancy Guthrie suddenly lost its vital connection to her phone's relay device. In that devastating window, a violent, chaotic struggle erupted in the dark. When the news crews eventually arrived, their cameras captured what the initial police sweep had carelessly missed: distinct droplets of blood scattered across the concrete. These were not normal drops. They had hollow, pale centers. Forensic legend Dr. Michael Baden examined the photographs of these stains and immediately recognized the chilling signature of donut-shaped blood. He explained that this specific pattern is formed by blood forcefully expelled from the nose or mouth, violently mixed with air during a final, desperate gasp. The entire kidnapping narrative forcefully collapses right here on the concrete, because professional kidnappers do not leave their only piece of leverage violently bleeding out on a driveway. They do not magically vanish into the unforgiving desert on foot, leaving absolutely no tire tracks, no getaway vehicle on neighborhood cameras, and no scent trail for a 2-mile radius.
As Savannah Guthrie and her siblings Cameron and Annie took to social media to beg for their mother's safe return, the alleged kidnapper began a sick theatrical performance that would baffle the world's most elite criminal profilers. The ransom notes were the very first visible crack in this monstrous facade. Sent exclusively to TMZ and local Tucson television stations instead of directly to the terrified family, the notes demanded a staggering $6 million in Bitcoin. But here is the chilling reality that makes the blood run cold. The notes provided absolutely no way to actually pay the ransom. There was no encrypted link, no physical drop-off location, no phone number, and no channel for dialogue. It was a terrifyingly one-way broadcast of a dying plan, leaving everyone waiting in a silence that felt entirely too final.
The silence that followed those unanswerable ransom notes was not the cautious hesitation of a cunning negotiator. It was the deafening, hollow quiet of someone who had absolutely nothing left to say because there was no living hostage to return. Enter Tracy Walder, a former FBI counterterrorism agent and CIA operative who spent her entire career dissecting the minds of methodical, violent predators. When she scrutinized the footage, she immediately tore down the local rumors of a burglary gone tragically wrong. Burglars do not target 84-year-old women with pacemakers, and they certainly do not arrive in the dead of night carrying a massive 25-liter hiking pack. That specific bag caught her trained eye, a bag designed not for hastily snatching jewelry or electronics, but for concealing heavy restraints, rope, and the dark, heavy tools necessary for a prolonged physical abduction. This was a highly targeted operation, a chilling manifestation of proxy violence. Walder introduced two deeply unsettling motives that completely shift the paradigm of this crime: obsession and retaliation. The monster who stepped out of the desert that night did not come for Nancy Guthrie. They came for the mother of Savannah Guthrie. Whether fueled by a twisted parasocial infatuation born from years of staring at a television screen, or a cold, calculated fury seeking to inflict the maximum amount of psychological devastation, the attacker knew that destroying the most precious person in Savannah Guthrie's life was the ultimate, inescapable weapon. This horrifying realization aligns perfectly with the explosive analysis of John Miller, the former Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence for the NYPD and a seasoned FBI Assistant Director. He did not mince words when he declared that this was a meticulously planned home invasion that violently collided with reality and went completely sideways. The intruder walked onto that porch at 1:47 in the morning with a specific, sinister intent to control and terrorize, but within 41 excruciating minutes, that primary objective was irrevocably shattered. Miller pointed directly to the blood on the concrete as the undeniable denominator of the entire case. The horrific donut-shaped drops tell the story of a catastrophic physical confrontation that forced the attacker to instantly re-engineer their entire crime on the fly. The bizarre, unanswerable ransom notes sent to the media were never a genuine demand for cryptocurrency. They were a panicked, improvised smokescreen. They were a desperate fictional narrative crafted in real time to explain away the permanent disappearance of an elderly woman, strategically pointing law enforcement toward a phantom digital transaction instead of a freshly dug grave. The crime had already been committed, the leverage was violently lost, and the notes were merely a frantic attempt to salvage a broken, ruined operation before the sun came up. While the public desperately clung to the fading hope of a hostage hidden in a dark room, the investigation quietly mutated into a cold, clinical hunt for microscopic ghosts. The FBI abruptly relocated its command post from Tucson to Phoenix, a move that John Miller insists is not a sign of a cooling trail, but rather the grim transition into a long-form, relentless siege. The forensic net is tightening invisibly around the suspect. A single discarded glove found 2 miles from the residence and visually matching the one worn by the shadowy figure in the doorbell footage currently sits in a private Florida laboratory. Preliminary DNA profiles have already been extracted from that fabric. The authorities are no longer just waiting for a direct match in the national database. They are weaponizing genetic genealogy. One distant cousin pulled over for a drunk driving charge, one nephew swabbing his cheek for an ancestry website anywhere in the country, and the fragile veil of anonymity protecting this killer will disintegrate in an instant. Behind the scenes, the grieving family remains a united front of quiet agony. The Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos, officially cleared Savannah Guthrie, Cameron Guthrie, and Annie Guthrie of any involvement, stripping away the noise so the crosshairs could lock entirely on the external threat. Furthermore, the family's $1 million reward is not a forgotten promise. It is a highly tactical lure deliberately withheld by federal investigators, waiting to be dropped like a depth charge the moment the perpetrator's fragile ego finally outweighs their suffocating paranoia. I am not definitively stating that Nancy Guthrie is dead because that grim conclusion has not been officially cemented by the authorities, but I am telling you with absolute certainty that the comforting illusion of a kidnapping for ransom was a lie constructed in the dark to hide a much more violent truth. 2 of the most credentialed intelligence experts in the country, analyzing the same shattered evidence from entirely different vantage points, have arrived at the exact same chilling epicenter. This was a targeted strike against a beloved public figure, executed on the front steps of her mother's sanctuary, which devolved into a chaotic, blood-soaked cover-up. The leads are still running hot, the genetic web is slowly expanding, and the answer to who hated Savannah Guthrie enough to hunt her mother in the dead of night is hiding just out of sight. Someone out there knows exactly what happened during those 41 missing minutes, carrying a secret that feels increasingly heavier with every passing day. The silence that fell over the Catalina Foothills that night has not won yet, and as the forensic snare pulls tighter, the person watching the news from the shadows must realize that their time is running out.